Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Hilaal Live. Thanks for watching us on channel 347. Also on our live stream, www.hilal.tv. Last week, I had Brother Abdul Azeez Davids in studio chatting to us about investments, and I thought let's invite him back, especially with the volatile rand, with our elections, and so many things contributing to our financial markets. So we decided to invite him back in studio. Brother Abdul Azeez, Jazakallah so much once again. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, and shukran for inviting me back.
My absolute pleasure. So for those that maybe, didn't watch last week, let's recap a little bit about some of the great, advice or the knowledge that you shared.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
reluctant to call it advice because
Yes.
we had a disclaimer
Yes.
last week as well.
Yes, shukran. And I think the key messages from last week were basically 2 points. Firstly, we discussed the importance of saving, and we unpacked, various reasons for saving, be it for Hajj, or be it for education, or be it for your first house. But then the second major theme was around what the big enemy was, which was inflation.
Correct.
And we unpacked the fact that inflation is probably the biggest enemy to wealth creation, in the sense that if you keep your money under the mattress, it's not going to grow.
Correct.
And we discussed the concept of time value of money, and the fact that over time, money in terms of its purchasing power deteriorate.
Yes.
And the numbers that I quoted very briefly last week was that a basket of 28 goods went from about 740 Rand 30 years ago with our first elections, and is now almost 5,300 Rand.
Wow.
So most people can't cope with it, what they call the cost of living crisis.
Yeah.
Conversely, the Rand has depreciated in value in terms of what it could buy by more than 50% over the last 15 years.
Yeah.
So that led us to the next discussion, which was what are the ways to save our money and to protect our money in terms of investing. And we very briefly talked about some of the concepts. It was a bit of a whirlwind. So what I wanted to do tonight is really just unpack some of the investing opportunities that are available. And we had quite a few, and thank you for the listeners and viewers that have interacted over the last week. Some of the questions that I got was maybe delve a bit more into investments, and especially the type of entrepreneurial stuff that one can do.
Gotcha. Well, when we think investments, like you said, it's always such a taboo topic because lots of people think you need to have money to invest. Also, with regards to the types of investment as well. And I think that's what we should maybe unpack and what this actually entails.
Yes. So I think tonight, let's first talk about what I would call entrepreneurial type investments.
Okay.
So these are investments where you're either in a partnership or you're even starting out. If you think of any graduate with the skills that they might have, might want to start their own business. There's a whole host of things to consider. The number one criteria is typically the business plan.
Right.
So most businesses unfortunately fail within the first 7 years because the plan is not robust. In terms of either looking at the product that you're providing or the service that you're rendering. Is it unique? Is there appetite and demand for it? And unfortunately today, South Africa, we've got a massive unemployment problem. Almost half our population is unemployed. So the competition for labor is very intense. We had a job advert for a junior trainee analyst, for example, one position, and you get 500 applications.
Wow.
And all of them are deserving.
Right.
So I think the world of work is very competitive. So a key message for our viewers tonight is that if you can start your own employment or start a company or something, a business venture, then do so. But try and think of something that has durability, something that has a demand, a product or a service as well.
And can sustain the economic climate.
100%. Well. Today the GDP numbers came out and our economy actually contracted. So that means that the value of all goods and services in the economy actually went down in the first 3 months of this year.
And you would think with the reprieve from petrol prices going down, fuel prices going down, inshallah, tomorrow, that would maybe influence. Unfortunately, it doesn't. And it's calculated over a period.
Yes, it doesn't in the short term, because what tends to happen is economic activity is influenced by confidence.
Correct.
People need to feel confident. If you're going to part with your money to invest in a project or to buy an equipment, you need to feel confident that first of all, the equipment is going to last, and secondly, you're going to get a return on it.
Of course. So you mentioned equity, you mentioned unit trust last week, this week as well. But what does that actually mean, and how will that be best suited for our viewers?
So I think what is important for the viewers is that, and most of our viewers are probably gainfully employed, so they're either working for a company or for a boss, or they self-employed.
Right.
So most people don't have the time of day to really dedicate to a business if they are fully employed on a daily basis. So I think what is important there is that to the extent that you can leverage of other people's skills, you must do so. But I think, given that limitation, for most people, they'll gravitate towards what I call lazy investments, where you outsource the investment to somebody else.
Right.
And that is typically where you find equity investing.
Okay.
So be it equity in companies. So, and last week we spoke about it briefly.
Right.
Companies listed on the stock exchange, you can actually buy these companies. Many companies have been around for a very long time.
Right.
So one can study their financials, and in future periods and future episodes, we can maybe talk about how do we analyze a company's financials.
Yeah.
But I think very importantly, as we discussed last week, equity investing, especially unit trust investing, is by far the easiest way for people to get exposure to an asset class that can give you a very good return without you having to do the grunt work, as I call it, in terms of, pitching up every morning, going to the office, rolling up your sleeves as well.
Yeah, and I think this is where the financial advisors come in, because they're trained to a point, they get the relevant advice or information for them to make informed decisions. And then, because not everybody, is inclined to watch the markets, know how, and there's so many different things these days, and there's newer companies coming up. The Shadrach 40, for example, that changes constantly as well. So these are opportunities that our viewers can tap into.
Definitely, and I think again, one needs to do a bit of homework.
Yeah.
So read as widely as you possibly can.
But ask as many
questions. So speak to a financial advisor. The financial advisors are equipped to give you the correct financial advice. Obviously, on this show, we can't really give financial advice.
Sure.
We can only open our viewers up to the opportunity set available to them. I think the other key point to make is that, you mentioned Shadrach and the Shadrach 40, for example. So these are typical, what they call index tracking funds. Again, one needs to do your homework.
Of course.
Our markets over the last, maybe prior to this year, have had a very good rally. So one needs to be discerning in terms of where you find that opportunities. But the good news for our viewers is that we will unpack these as we go along.
Absolutely.
And I think let's leave it at that.
And when we're thinking about equity, when we're thinking about unit trust, the first thing as a Muslim community, we think Sharia compliant.
Yes.
So maybe let's look and maybe unpack some of the Sharia compliant opportunities that our viewers can tap into.
So a very important question, because in our market today, you find that it's quite confusing what constitutes Sharia and what is Sharia compliant. And the last week we briefly talked about the three basic principles, which is riba, the interest component, which is totally forbidden in Islam. We talked about uncertainty and the fact that we are not allowed to gamble and take unnecessary or undue risk. So those are the three principles. But just taking a layer down, for most Sharia compliant investments, it's also about the business activity that is involved.
Right.
So for most companies, in South Africa, you can clearly see when a company or industry is non-compliant, be it the alcohol or brewing industry, be it banking or financial services, for example, or be it any of those, for example, defense and ammunition. So those are all harmful businesses, and we try not to invest in those. And then on top of that, as we discussed with the riba question, companies with too much debt, that in particular is frowned upon, because with too much debt, they're paying a lot of interest. And conversely, if a company is sitting on too much cash, then they're earning interest. So if you're receiving a dividend, a portion of your dividend might come from an interest or haram source as well.
Wow, very interesting point there as well. We've just come out of the elections. It's been a whirlwind. There's still so much going on.
Yes.
It's been rather confusing for some. It's been rather clear-cut for others as well. But how does politics affect the way we invest, especially since we are coming out? We had a volatile rand, we had a booming rand, and then a volatile rand, and now it's starting to balance out a little bit as well. How does the political environment affect the way we invest?
I think it's actually quite a simple question, a simple answer to a complicated question, in the sense that for most investors, they want two things. They want a certain and normalized economic environment in which to do business, and they want certainty around the rights, the economic rights that they have. As I said, investing, be it in a company or in equity or in unit trust, is all about confidence. So investors need to feel confident that if they're going to part with their money, if they're going to invest in a country, that you can actually, get that opportunity back. So you're absolutely right. I think where we are today, and as we sit today, we don't still know.
Of course.
And it can go because the majority party doesn't have an outright majority.
Correct.
So you're in the realm of coalition governments, and we're likely to see one of two coalitions formed. And either one does have implications for certainty around economic activity and confidence as well.
Yeah, interesting times that we are living in. And I think that the coalitions coming up will determine the way our economic climate is going to perform over the next 4 or 5 years, because that's how long it's going to be as well. So we'll keep our listeners, our viewers abreast of what exactly to expect during this climate as well. And Jazakallah to yourself for always making yourself available and giving us valuable insight around what can be a very confusing topic at times.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. There we go. Brother Abdul Azeez Davids comes into studio and unpacks certain investment advice, or stop saying advice. Investments. Abdul Azeez is a consultant and gives valuable insight into the world of investment. Jazakallah for watching. After the break, we've got a very special guest that's coming into studio. You don't want to miss out on this one. You are still watching Hilaal Live.